Welcome to the Better Care Podcast. With me today, I have Dr. Michelle Flemmings. Michelle is Executive Director and Market Development Leader for Healthcare for Oracle Cloud. Prior to this, she was the Director and Physician Executive for Cerner Community Works. Previously, you've served as CMIO for Pagosa Springs Medical Center. The best part about your resume, actually, there's a few good things on here. Emergency physician. I've had numerous clinical and EMS leadership roles. Graduate, got your MD from SUNY Upstate Medical University, where I attended as well, and I must say puts out fantastic physicians.
Indeed.
You did your internal medicine residency at St. Luke's, and you did your emergency medicine residency at The Ohio State University. First off, it's a pleasure to have you here in the EvidenceCare offices with us today. I tell folks all the time, and they don't believe me when I say this, but I loved residency. But I don't know if I loved it enough to do 2 residencies. So talk to me about 2 residencies.
Oh, man. You start with that.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's funny. I'm glad you reminded me that we were alums. That is exactly how we met on social media, was because of that. And I'm glad you put in because otherwise, if I go home now, there'll be somebody taking it off my wall if it's not said properly. Mm-hmm. Okay. So 2 residencies. I had decided that internal medicine was pretty darn cool. I enjoyed it. I thought maybe I was going to be a cardiologist. But then I sat back and I needed to pay up my student loans. I was in my 20s living in New York City in the days of Studio 54. And I had amassed quite a bunch of debt that was not going to be paid on a resident salary. So I started working in the ED part-time and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have to carry a beeper. No 2 patients are the same. Something interesting is always happening. And it was a mix of the chaos and the unpredictability that seduced me. And it was the days before you could have an internal medicine resident working well in the ED. We didn't know things like RSI and all of the cool stuff we do now. And it was right after they stopped the grandfathering. And the only jobs left, undesirable at best.
Yeah.
So I went back and I remember counting the days, and honestly, looking back, every single day was so worth it. I'm much better as an emergency medicine physician now than I was when I was trying.
That's awesome. So what is it about emergency physicians that you feel makes them effective healthcare leaders and executives?
I'm so glad you asked this one. I always tell folks the reason I'm here is because we are the example of eternally curious. We are the kids who mom said, don't touch this, and we touched it just to see if it was really true. And then we went back to make it better, faster, smarter, all of those cool things. We will be the MacGyvers always. Give us a paperclip and a rubber band, and we will try our best to recreate civilization. So I think especially in this space, the way that we work, the way that our minds work, the way that we're forced also by the nature of the job to work across the entirety of the organization, from front office to ambulatory to the OR, we need to know a lot about supply chain, especially if you're the night doc. We need to know about EMS. All of that organizational insight and knowing it from the inside, I think, is what makes us well suited for this sort of position.
Yeah. And emergency physicians, we just seem to understand the landscape of the hospital, all the different specialties, how they all interact with each other.
Absolutely. And then also how it comes back to affect our patient. We're very territorial about our patient.
Yeah.
So how are we going to help them, even for the relatively short time that we're involved in their lives? How are we going to help them and their families to navigate the best course and get to the best disposition for them so that they can get the best outcomes? And we really, I believe, drive a hard bargain when it comes to our patients.
Yeah. I've seen recently that you've given a presentation at one of the conferences titled Fear or FOMO, and this was on the topic of AI. So share with me a few thoughts from that presentation and what you talked about in that.
Well, I will say that publicly, I am bummed that I didn't run into you at the conference because I cannot believe you were there and we missed each other, but glad I'm here. The Fear and FOMO, that title really encompasses a lot of the conversations that I have with our clients. A lot of folks are, yeah, I want to do it all. Let's just do it now. Let's get it done yesterday. And then there are some that are like, let's see if the other guy survives. Another bunch will say, is this the shiny object? Is it the tantalizer? And all of the above are true. It just depends on where you're standing and what your perspective is. Truth be told, there's a lot of fear, and rightfully so. In healthcare, we have to be very strategic. We have to be very thoughtful and consider on behalf of those patients we just were speaking about, is this going to do harm? Because if it is, then honestly, we need no part of that. No physician, no clinician wants any part of that. That said, there's a lot of opportunity, especially around, we have all the staffing shortages, which are so not new, but they've gotten worse. How are we going to sustain the speed at which we need to deliver care to these ever-surging patient populations and census, and then all of the folks who have much more advanced disease than we usually see, while we don't have the pipeline that we used to have, and we're not for at least the foreseeable future, how are we going to use technology to bridge that as opposed to being a barrier? Mm-hmm. Because we both know when CPOE came out, a lot of ER docs were standing there with their arms crossed going, no, and you can't make me. Mm-hmm. And then they got physician trust on technology. And the last time we petted that little dog, it bit us. And we're like, no. So how do we go back from all of that fear based in real experience to say, trust us again this time, this could work? That's why the toe in the water for some, and a lot still standing on the edge going, well, we'll see if the other one comes up for air again and survives it.
Staying on that topic of not just AI, but sort of digital innovation in healthcare. And I'm going to steal a line from one of my friends who will be on our podcast in a month from now. He's one of the innovations folks at OSF Health. He has said there is a tsunami coming that physicians are not, and nurses are not prepared for. Do you think that doctors and nurses really comprehend what's coming in terms of digital innovation? And do you think they're prepared and ready to adapt their workflows and to really accept what comes? Because it is going to come quickly.
Oh, it is. It is. Every day it's coming faster. And I love that quote. I will tell you, in my heart of hearts, I know that some are. I know that you are one of the ones who absolutely over the next 10 years, we could sit down here and we could just blaze a trail of what it could be. And some of it may not happen. We may actually be ahead of it all and farther thinking than a lot. The majority, though, at this time, if you are practicing, you are so face down and head down in work and the OMG of the workforce shortages, I don't know that you can see this coming. And honestly, I don't know that you really care about it because you've got other things that are much more pressing in your life and in your work that are taking your attention. That said, technology is changing very rapidly. And especially in the healthcare space, the technology is taking off, AI in particular, faster than even smartphones did, which is an amazing feat considering that smartphones, it was like, oh, you see it, and then everybody has it, and then we're on version 15 of the iPhone, or maybe beyond. I might have lost count. Healthcare, again, we can't keep up with that pace because we need to test. We test our best practice recommendations and our evidence-based everything for a very long time before decades. We will put a human in there.
Yeah.
So this one, I think we're going to be forced into it. I think that it's incumbent upon folks like you and myself and the doc you're quoting to really start bringing in some of the folks who are now still at the bedside working who may not be cognizant of the fact that this is coming, because it's going to part and parcel change the way that we do our jobs, and it may even change the job. It's going to take it from being something that we look at and go, we can or can't use it, or we have an option not to being, wow, if I don't use it, then I'm going to be way behind. My patient outcomes may suffer, and. So I don't think that we have an opportunity or a luxury to consider for too long, and that maybe it's incumbent upon our colleges also to really start stressing this from the day in med school, not even residency. Be aware this is happening, and this is how it's going to elevate your practice. This is how it may become something that challenges you, but this is also something that may help you to grow beyond your wildest dreams in your career.
Yeah, I love that. So an emergency physician now finds themselves at Oracle. How did that happen? And what is it about the opportunity that got you excited about, joining the Oracle team?
Well, Brian, you gave a little bit of my circuitous route with the intro, because I started out in the 80s minding my own business. I swore that I was going to be a surgeon and then realized, nope, not cut out for that. Then I thought, well, gee whiz, maybe what I'll do is internal medicine. Emergency medicine was just starting as a really well-established residency at that point in time. And I didn't think at that time that I wanted to be in that chaos. I think I wanted to sit down and be more of the Marcus Welby kind of a doc. So I was a hospitalist and an intensivist before the words existed. And then, as I told you, the jobs that I could get in the ER, because I found that it was something that I had an affinity for and that liked me back, they weren't really the jobs that I would want to see myself in for any period of time. So that was why the second residency. After that, just about any opportunity to drive change, make it better, make it faster, make it better, especially for the providers, make it better, especially for the patients. And I know that you understand this. Inherent in emergency medicine is that impatience, that wanting everything yesterday. And even yesterday sometimes isn't soon enough for the results we need to make that decision right now at the bedside. And a lot of that, I know, is what drove me to end up at Cerner. I ended up, thankfully, in the EHR, which was great. That was right on the cutting edge of where I needed to be to really get my and other docs' opinions pulled into and our insights and perspective brought into what the EHR became, especially in emergency medicine. We're very used to habit. We do enjoy chaos, but don't make my workflows chaotic. I need something, that who moved my cheese thing. We need something predictable. And that's because of a lot of us who are working with the system as end users on Cerner, why the system works as well as it does. With that, though, when Cerner got acquired by Oracle, the thought went through my head very quickly, and I still remember telling my husband, I was like, this is a dream come true. This is all the things that have been in my head ever as a provider, and now I have access to 100,000+ people. This is all they want to know about. So Oracle went big into healthcare, yes, with the EHR, yes, with all of the technology, and I love where I've ended up. I love now that I'm on the tech side, I'm able to also bridge that gap between the client problems and the problems in the hospitals that the providers are experiencing, that the organizations are experiencing, and then translate that for the reps to say, they're not talking about what you think they're talking about. When you see things like Leapfrog and CMS Stars and HEDIS and JACO and nursing magnet status, these are all things that speak to quality. The need for data analytics. They are proud of these things, and these are where we need to sit with them in partnership and support. Then you also have to get the trust in that partnership and get from being transactional to being truly an advocate and understanding the inner workings of the organization to bring forward and say, guys, you're doing awesome with this. However, did you think maybe you might need some help in doing it maybe with real-time or near real-time data? And that's where it gets exciting. And that's where the tech like AI comes in.
Yeah. I saw a quote from you on LinkedIn recently that said, Oracle does not consider healthcare a hobby and are not dabbling in it. And then it continued on. But I'll ask the question, so what is Oracle's mission in healthcare?
Oracle cut its teeth on data long before I ever thought that I'd find myself in this spot. Oracle's mission, and this is in my words, our mission is to help you to realize all of the insights and all of those petabytes and mountains of data in near real time. Get the actionable insights that matter for the patient, for your providers, for your business, so that you can not only have the patient get to care faster, get back to health faster, but also keep the lights on, keep the doors open, keep ahead of your competition, keep your providers at the bedside and keep them happier. Augment their workflows so it's meaningful for them and they get home for soccer games. Having dinner with your husband, I remember that being a big thing.
Yes.
For years, my hubby and I used to do sign out in the ER and the nurses would always marvel. It's like, we had 4 dogs. It's like all of them have been fed. Everybody's been out. This one did number 1. This one didn't do number 2. So remember this. And it sounded ridiculous, but that's how life was. And it didn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be.
Yep.
That's why I sit here.
Awesome. So a big announcement today that was made that Oracle is moving their world headquarters to Nashville, which is very exciting news. So it sort of highlights for me the fact that Oracle is a global company. And as Americans, we tend to get very myopic on our focus of healthcare. But talk to me about, how is Oracle engaging around the world on healthcare, and how do you see Oracle, operating in other countries around the world?
Amazing question. And the Nashville, I think you might actually be a little ahead of me, although that has been a talk. With regard to Oracle Global, yes, it is a beautiful thing that we are global. We have 48 regions on the cloud. In the South Pacific, we have in EMEA, there's one in South Africa, there's a bunch in the US. My goal, I would love us to have a remote device on Antarctica. If I can get one to the North Pole, I would be a happy person. There is almost nowhere in the world that we would not be able to have the reach and have the tech to support care. And a conversation that I've had a lot with folks when they say, why do you keep thinking of all of these things, is because some reason there's this vision in my head of a little kid somewhere in Botswana, and they need something. I don't know what it is, but they need something. They need more than what they have capable there. Maybe they need somebody to do surgery long distance and have the doc doing telehealth from London. But I see those things as possible. And I see that technology done well can really, truly support healthcare equity and combat access. Long ago, it has been time for us to stop talking about, not stop talking about, we still need to talk about the social determinants of health. Let me go backwards on that. We still need to talk about them, but now it's time to partner that with action. And I think that technology is going to be able to help us to do that. It's going to take a lot more than what we have now with regard to the agreements across all of the vendors and all of the hospitals and all of the organizations. But I think we should be able to come together and align and say, okay, this is the right thing to do. Let's start here, even if it's messy. Some of it might be just as simple as the data grab. Does it really include the person who has a third shift job and has to take a bus to the clinic? Or are we basing our staffing models on people who have a 9 to 5 and therefore can be in before 6 o'clock? We need to do better with regard to reflecting in how we do care, utilizing technology to gather the entirety of the human experience, and not just the United States, but globally. And I think that's something that Oracle is well placed to do.
So shifting gears a little bit, so obviously in healthcare, we've gone through a very large and very well publicized cyber attack recently. Do we stand a chance in healthcare with our data truly being secure?
Another great question. We do. And the reason I'm shaking my head, and no one can probably see on the podcast, is that just about every day, every one of us gets some notice about somewhere our data was compromised. And by now, I think I have a lifetime membership in just about all of the people that are going to fix my credit score or whatever. We do have a chance. We have more than a chance. And the shame of it is, and the truth of it is, the guidelines are relatively simple. And a lot of the simple steps just don't get done good enough when it comes to security, especially when you're talking about healthcare data. Good enough isn't. We need to do better. We need to not cut corners. We need to do all of the steps. If it means calling in a consultant to get an assessment, do so. It's better than ending up in the newspaper and having to apologize to all of these people and then pay for these memberships. Pediatric hospitals are especially at risk because of the new babies and the new data that's out there, and nobody's touched it yet except somebody who's looking at it all the time and lurking in the background. There are so many ways of securing the data, and I think that's another one that is a big responsibility for all of us in healthcare. I think everybody in every organization, it doesn't matter if you're housekeeping or the CEO at a hospital, every single one of us who touches the system, who enters data, who takes data out, who interacts with the data, all of us are stewards of the data. So having guidelines in place and honoring them, testing them, getting an assessment from the outside, making certain with whoever your vendor is of your software that it is as recommended. Oracle has guidelines about that. And we do also have different practices that when we have our conversations, much like I dare say you do, you have recommendations. I think all of us need to be certain that we're sharing those and that we urge our clients to, if you don't know, ask and connect them with a resource.
Yeah. In your position, you get to see a lot of interesting things, interact with a lot of great people, see a lot of, new products that are on the market or that are even in development to go on the market. You don't have to mention any companies or products, but what sort of emerging technologies have you seen that you've said, wow, that is really cool. That is really interesting. I wish I had thought of that. Anything come to mind?
Well, of course, AI is on everybody's brain. So that's always on my brain. And then the next iterations that you see in the industry events of what's possible are beyond amazing. Some of the items that will go into medications on oncology and making certain that you can match it with the patient and then make certain that it's safe for this particular patient over here and that this is the best regimen. Amazing. Taking the medication reconciliation process and not tying the hands of your pharmacist anymore over things as simple as Tylenol for an approval. Doing that, as a friend of mine says, automagically, but then serving up the insights. So all you have to do is say yes once is a beautiful thing. Robotics. Yes, we have them in the OR. Yes, we have them around a lot of the hospital. And there was one that really just fascinated me. And I saw it was a nurse that followed the nurse around and it would help record vital signs. And I thought, how genius. Now, if we can just free up the nurses from the computer, that would be amazing. Mm-hmm. I have a vision in my head, very much like Bones McCoy, computer, do this. Computers serve up the records. The other is the Internet of Things, all of the data that sits on all of our little devices, and we know how much we slept, et cetera. We know what our heart rate is minute to minute. My doc doesn't know those things. We need to somehow take it from all of my gadgets and fandangery and put it in the EHR in a comprehensive manner that is very digestible and that you can act on. I think that's going to be magical when someone figures that out. And whoever's listening and I haven't seen you, I apologize.
Yeah.
Because I know there's somebody out there who's probably done it. I just haven't met them yet.
You touched your shoulder here and you made me think of another question. And this is one, I know you said you're always thinking of new ideas. I thought of this idea probably 15 years ago when I first started using Cerner at my hospital here in Nashville. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just walk in the room and have a conversation with the patient and have that all recorded and documented so that when I walked out of the room, I didn't have to spend 10 minutes actually doing that. Well, that's here now. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about, how you've seen that evolution of ambient documentation over the last few years and, the opportunities you see for that.
Oh, amazing. And you and I started in the days where if you didn't speak very slowly, it wasn't going to capture it, even though it was well-trained in English. And now to the point where it can listen to usually 2 to 3 people in the room, pick up patient, pick up physician, and then have the sensibility to go and put it in the EHR in the right place for you. Amazing. What I have challenged some to do is I want it to get good enough. And again, as an ER doc, you'll get this. I want to be able to have that app on my phone. Turn on my phone when I go into a resuscitation, like a trauma room. And it captures everything from the medications to what the nurse is saying, to the medication reconciliation, to the timeline of when the surgeon walked in the room, chest tube was put in, all of those things. We're not quite there yet. But I dare say we'll be much, much closer in the next year, closer than in 18 months. I'm thinking 2 years from now, that's going to be, so what? We can do even more than that. What is cool is that there are also technologies that compound on that and will, from the conversation, then come back and make recommendations and say, Dr. Fengler, you were talking to this person, they're a new diabetic. We've also served up the new orders for things like a glucose stick and a glucometer, and, they haven't seen a podiatrist or an ophthalmologist, all of those things. And that is amazing. I want it to get smart enough that it knows. And I was having this conversation actually on a flight here with a gentleman who was stopping in Dallas, also turned out to be in software and healthcare. And I told him, I said, what I want it to do is, my goal is to have it be smart enough that it sits down and it knows, I'm Michelle Flemmings, ER doc. I'm seeing Mrs. Jones in room 3. Mrs. Jones is a cardiac patient, 52 years old, with a history of an MI in the past. It gives me then the risk stratification. It also gives me a little reminder off to the side, but it's not going to mess with my workflow and it's not going to mess with my brain, because every single time we're interrupted, we can forget something. But it's going to have over there the next best steps and guidelines as a reminder, because we all know that those tend to change. And as I go to sign my document and make that disposition, it may go, Michelle, you missed this over here. She's a CHF patient, a heart failure patient. She should go out on these 3 medications. Or maybe it'll tell me she went out on these 3 medications, but she's been non-compliant with this one because we have the information from her pharmacy. And her pharmacy happens to be in another state. That, I think, would be brilliant. And talk about a way to offload the cognitive burden from providers. We don't have to make those calls or ask Agnes at the desk to send us that paper file that never has exactly what you want, but comes in a gazillion packages. How can we capture EMS data? Because we both know that a lot of times care starts at the bedside, and that bedside may be at the side of the road or somewhere out in the wilderness. And a lot of that data is either on a scanned-in record, which might as well be lost in a lot of our systems, or God love EMS. I used to be EMS medical director, but they are busy and they may be filling it out sometime distant from the actual care. So it may not have the degree of detail. Can you imagine the ambient listening in a non-chaotic system, of course, because if it's chaotic, it'll get interrupted by the noise. But can you imagine taking that and capturing, especially long distance transfers? Now your hands are free to think about the patient as opposed to, did I document this? Marvelous. That is how we need to start thinking, because you asked that question about 10 years from now. That's part of the 10 years gap. We have to have people start thinking that it's going to be very much like what we used to see on TV as kids and go, wow.
Mm-hmm. Any accomplishments, over the last year or so, since you've started at Oracle, with your clients that you don't have to name clients, but just accomplishments or results that you're just super proud of and would love to be able to highlight?
I think a lot of them are in the space of the innovations. What clients are getting more and more bold about doing and collaborating with you on, believing in cloud, believing in AI, and then challenging us to do even better. The other one that I am very proud of is that, and I still don't know how this started, but there are a fair number of independents and smaller vendors who want to partner with us. And they fill a beautiful little gap in a workflow. And they are willing to come to the table and work with our engineers to get that on cloud, because they believe, as I do, patients and providers don't have the time to wait on a roadmap or on innovation that is yet to come. Mm-hmm. If it's there, we should be capturing it. And that is going to be really cool. As that starts to happen, it's going to change, again, the way that we do our work. It's going to make it easier and better. I think, honestly, one of the bestest, coolest things is something you said when we first sat down and started talking. I graduated SUNY Upstate in, I think, 81. When did you graduate?
2001.
Okay, so 20 years apart. Mm-hmm. And here we are talking about the future in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I think what's really going to be cool is when the third person is sitting in the seat, maybe 10 years from now, and I'm talking about retiring and handing off to this other person, what they're going to say is their most marvelous thing. And hopefully there'll be another ER physician saying, dude, we're trying to wag the dog from the inside and we are making inroads.
Yeah. We need to get a 2021 SUNY Upstate grad at the table.
Shout out.
2023 was the year of AI in healthcare. Biggest buzzword. You heard at every conference. But I sense that pendulum is starting to swing maybe a little bit back towards the middle. And I was at Becker's last week, and AI came up in multiple discussions, and I had multiple health system executives just sort of shake their head, make faces, say, don't even talk to me about AI. Like it's all BS. What's your response to that? And for those health system executives that feel like, there's a lot of hype, but they're not really seeing anything there yet that's changing, their processes or their physicians' clinical care.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I do think the pendulum is swinging the other way. HIMSS was another one that was massive AI, less so at Becker's. And I dare say the next big conference, it's even going to be less. It'll be interesting to see if we can pick the topic of discussion, the big one for the fall conferences. What I say to those that think it's BS is, fair enough. You're entitled to your opinion. Have you touched it? Have you seen it? Have you seen what it can do? Or have you just said, I'm not going to do? And I think that also goes a little bit back to the fear. We don't have the capability and we don't have the luxury of time to waste time, energy, or money in this day and age to test it out and be that guinea pig. We just don't. So if you're an executive, if you're a CEO of a major enterprise organization, you're going to need somebody to come forward and bring it. It's going to need to be something that has been battle tested. It's going to need to be something that is not going to derail care. We already know that technology and any change in period is going to be somewhat disruptive. Technology, though, it can mushroom in complexity, because you would think that an EHR go live and an ER wouldn't necessarily derail care across an organization or, God forbid, an enterprise, but it is that disruptive. So what I recommend is, if you would like to try, let's talk. Let's talk about small things. Maybe something in the front office, a chatbot that is healthcare specific. Maybe something that helps navigate, especially if you're a very large, geographically large organization, a patient, maybe navigate them from their parking space to the lab, to their mammo, and then to their doc's office. Not going to derail care. Potentially is going to save people time because the patient's going to get there on time, and it's also going to be a patient satisfier. Maybe put something on the phone line so that the nurses aren't disrupting care and answering the phone and saying, yes, the pharmacy's open till 9 p.m. tonight. And then after you get those sorts of wins, think more expansively. Maybe something that sits alongside radiology and helps to put some consistency in some of the grading systems. I mean, in the ER, we have so many grading systems of whatever, if it's calcification of the breast in radiology, if it's bone density, if it's something like, how big is that granuloma? Well, I estimate it based on my thumb. How about we put it into some of those things to make it a little bit more exact and take that burden off the doc, but not take the human out of healthcare and not take the decision-making away from the doc, because that's where even I get hesitant. I really advise, if you're going to go with clinical decision support, you have to have a human in there somewhere still to validate. You have to. It can't just be that the machine takes over and I click and then it goes off and it does whatever it wants to do or whatever it thinks it's supposed to do. But for the CEOs who are looking and thinking and pondering and saying, maybe it's BS, take that maybe, get to the table, have somebody show you, maybe connect you with somebody who's doing it and has had even a modicum of success, maybe around operational efficiency in the OR, a proof point. And then after you've had the proof point, fine. Still happy to talk with you.
One of the things on that fear side is, and you just mentioned that, we always need to have a clinician in the loop. What level of precision do you think is needed in these decision support modules or tools before they'll be truly accepted? And I say that with the balance being, we know that humans make lots of errors in healthcare. We know to err is human, the most important report that ever came out in healthcare. But we live in this world where, and I don't know the exact numbers, but probably tens of thousands of people driving cars every day hit pedestrians or get into accidents, but yet one case happens with an automated car and it's all over the news and it's a sign that AI is a failure or technology is a failure. Mm-hmm. Where do we need to get with our clinical decision support tools? Do they need to be 90%, 95%? Because probably at 80%, they would be better than a human, but nobody's going to accept an 80% model.
I agree with you. And as you started talking, I was like, I wonder what that number would be. And truth is, it depends on which side of the bed rail you are. If I'm the patient, it better be 150%.
Knowing that your physician's only 80%, correct?
Yeah.
Or the patients don't understand that.
If my doc is 80, most patients don't know. And a lot of them, honestly, God love them. I think that they are in such extremis, they don't care. They have somebody who is there who says they're physician, nurse, et cetera, who's making the best decision they can with what they've got. And I don't think that they care necessarily in the moment. I know my aunt does. My aunt is now 91 years old, and every single time she hears something or gets something in the mail about her data, she's like, AI is going to kill people. It's like, Auntie, I get it. I don't think you're right, but I get it. For the number, I don't think that we can come up with one, in truth. I think that it's going to depend a lot on the specialty. I mean, if you're a neurosurgeon, 1 millimeter off and all of a sudden you don't know your name. And I'm not a neurosurgeon, so I could have my numbers off. Cardiology also, very exact science. ER, a lot of stuff we got to remember. Surgery is using robotics already, doing very, very well with it. And I dare say there's a fair amount that AI could do, but I know a lot of surgeons who would be like, no, thank you. I also know a lot of ER docs who are like, if it could do these 3 things, great. But stay away from this rest of the pile over here. I know it's a pile, but I'm getting to it. I don't want you touching it. So I think it's a very personal question. I will venture that if we get to 99.9%, I know at least 10 of my friends who are going to go, still not good enough. Still not good enough. That 0.1 could mean a patient's life. And they're absolutely right. When you, though, put it out there with car accidents and the automatically driven cars and the disparity in the opinion, that's going to be, I think, until AI is as pervasive and as routine as it has the potential to be, like a smartphone. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got it and it didn't kill anybody, knock on wood. See, I'm even knocking on wood because I don't trust it, I guess. SIRI, stop listening. But I don't think even then we're going to, until we get to that point of it being pervasive and common use and common trust, that it's going to be okay. And I still get shivers up my spine at every conference when they have one of the robots look and start talking at me and know my name. It's still a little bit freaky when technology gets that close and that smart.
Yeah.
But I'm also the one, my husband has a Venus flytrap, and I'm convinced one day I'm going to get up and it's going to be Feed Me Seymour.
It's a great movie.
Oh, I still want to smash that plant every day I see it.
Well, Michelle, thank you for joining us today on the Better Care podcast. Thank you again for coming into our offices here in Nashville. Where can folks find you if they want to connect with you?
Well, I would joke and say right here, because you have a lovely office. But
thank you.
I am on LinkedIn, and I think I'm the only Michelle Flemmings at oracle.com on LinkedIn. I really do. At Oracle, I'm Michelle with 2 L's, Flemmings, 2 M's and an S, at oracle.com. And otherwise, EvidenceCare will be happy to connect you with me. Right, Brian?
That's right.
Now you're going to be the center of the Oracle universe. Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
We'll be your conference planners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You think I won't take you up on that, don't you?
No, let's do it.
There you go.